Today we're going to be looking at these utility belt Buzz Lightyears. Now this one in particular is a little bit worse for wear. These were sold by Thinkway toys and have now become quite collectible. This is essentially a collection Buzz Lightyear as part of their collection or signature collection range. And as far as I'm aware, in the UK they were only sold via Tesco's with the utility belt. The rest of them you could buy anywhere. As I was saying, this particular toy is a little bit worse for wear. His labels are a little bit messy. Some of them are slightly discoloured or starting to peel up at the edges. And the plastics have just seen life where it's been played with. This lid or visor has become loose. As you can sort of see, it moves up and down on this joint. It's really common on these toys and they actually snap down here. But I've been very lucky and I've managed to find a completely standard collection toy. Now this is absolutely immaculate. It's a total collectible. Now the sad thing is, between the two of these are fairly valueless. I mean, in the collectible range, they're probably worth in the UK maybe 50 to 60 pounds at the moment in this sort of condition. But this one here in good condition is worth probably 200 to 300. So there's a massive difference there. So sadly, we are going to sacrifice this toy to make this one perfect. However, we are going to end up with just a slightly scruffier standard collection toy, which again can be resold for slightly lesser value, but we're going to put all the good bits from this one onto this one. From an electronic standpoint, these are mostly the same. This does have a different motherboard in this particular toy to deal with the utility belt. So it's got a different input, but I'm going to show you that in more detail in a moment. But everything else, literally arms, communicator, legs, everything are interchangeable. The heads just plug into the other toy. So all we're going to do is start donoring some stuff across. You only need a Phillips screwdriver and there is literally 4 screws on the back. Now, very important note, as you would see in my other videos, these collection toys, you never touch these screws here. These are plastic and I've seen so many of these round off, which is a real shame. All you do is you actually grab it with a firm grip and just pull it off. Nice and easy. And when you're looking behind here, you can see the screw holes for the toy just there, there and there. So I'm just going to whip those off quickly. That's all it takes, just these 4 screws, just there. Then we want to turn him back over, and as we do, just shake the screws out so we've got them all, and we can put those in.
Territory. Scan the area for hostiles.
We just turn them off quickly. And all we want to do is put the 4 screws just to the side. Now, we're going to remove the stomach plate. This is quite easy to do. Now, everything sort of clamps together, so you've got to understand when this comes off here, you're going to lose the fixings for these. They often come away with them. The arms and that are clamped through this chest plate, and so are the legs. So we've got to be careful because the toy starts to become sort of loose at that point. So all we do is we take a firm grip, and as you can see, it just pops up from there, and that's it. It's open and free. So the chest plate is wired there, and you can see inside here we've got the speaker and the connection ports. Now we are going to disconnect some of that in a minute, but in the meantime, let's get the other toy open and ready. So once all your screws have been removed from this toy, I'm going to take them out of the way and put them with the other one. Now the chest plate's exactly the same. This one's helmet's locked in a little bit nicer. But if we pop him out, we'll see he's exactly the same inside. Now these are a couple of things to note which I want to actually show you on the board itself. So we go for a bit of a zoom in a moment. Now if we look at this toy here, we've got this extra cable here which goes to a particular part of the board, which you can probably see just here. Now that's not present on this toy, so these legs simply come off, and it's because there's no cabling or anything that comes out. Now most of it, for the most part now, if we took both of these legs away, these are roughly the same toy, especially for the torso. It's more just the legs and the belt, and they've just put the extra provisions in on these motherboards to take the extra wiring. That's it. That's the only difference between the two. So the next thing we're going to be doing is actually disconnecting some of these cables. Now, the reason we want to do this is because we actually need to transfer the motherboards over and actually keep all the pieces, torsos, heads and everything as they were. These are very fiddly and they're not really designed to be plugged on and off a lot. So you want something sensible, like a decent pair of pliers and probably a screwdriver, a nice flathead screwdriver. Either of these are going to help massively, and you've just got to be very careful because a lot of the time you can actually pull the plastic connector off the board. These all are very cheaply made and they're not designed to be taken apart and put back together a lot. So just bear that in mind as we're doing it. Now I am going to start with the non-utility belt version. The simple reason is I want to take this stuff off of this board and have it ready for the other board just to be transferred straight in. So we're going to focus on this toy. Now when you're looking at the actual top of these, so like stuff like the arms here, they're on pegs and they actually just pop up. Simple as that, very easy, and you can just move them out the way. You can do exactly the same with that. Forgot to turn this one off as well. That's it. So these can be up and moved and they can be disconnected from the board. So they're quite straightforward to do. All we need to be now doing is just looking at these. Now I am going to zoom in slightly so you can see as we're doing it. These right here can simply be disconnected. So you just got to just grab just the edge of it and wiggle them loose. You don't want to apply too much pressure to the board itself, and you only want to hit the top socket. Although it's quite hard to see, it's just the top of the socket you want to be grabbing and not the bottom. And these should all just pop off. Then just disconnecting them just like that. So they just come straight out of the socket. Once they're there, that whole arm can be moved to our pile of stuff to be transferred. And we're going to do exactly the same with this one. There we go. So nice and easy. So they're just now out of the way. You probably saw a moment ago, these two pieces popped off. They're okay. They are handed, so we're going to just make a reference of those when they go back in, and they just hold that visor in place. So just bear in mind, they are different because of the pin configuration. So all we need to do is just take that visor. Again, I'd say it's a good idea to keep these out and to hand up the right way. So when you look, you're going to see where these go on to. Now, this is the bit I'm talking about that always breaks. And you can see here, it's a very thin bit of plastic that just goes around the edge, and same on this side. So when kids are playing with them, which they should, I know we always get comments about them not being played with, but yeah, if you tap these on anything, these tiny little bits of plastic just break and then the whole thing comes loose. But I'd say keep it up this way so it's just easy to reference when it goes back on. So just set it aside up the right way. Now, the next bit we need to focus on is probably the chest plate. To do that, we're going to make life a little bit easier to get these plugs and just pull the head free. So as we pull them out, it's just clipped in again. It's not in there tight. The actual chest plate sandwiches them in place. So we're getting closer to the board itself. So we're just going to focus now on getting those out. So we'll just start off by doing exactly the same. If they don't come straight away, as I say, just use those pliers to just pull them free. But most of them you can probably just pull by hand. Pliers just help sometimes if they're being stubborn or you feel like it's all coming together, which these are coming away quite nicely. So there's 3 of those for the chest plate, and that's it, disconnected, done, dusted and easy. So we can just set that aside. It's just another piece, and then we can focus on the head. Now the head, again, multiple cables as it goes back in, so you don't really need to make a note as per such because it starts becoming easier. They only fit a certain way round, so you can't really get them wrong. Just make a rough note. I mean, I always find it's easy to take a picture on your phone before you start, so at least you've got somewhere to reference back to if you do get stuck. But they're quite easy to remember. Now you've got 4 for the head. These are obviously for the motor itself and the micro switches as it turns and rotates and locks in. So again, same thing, set them aside, get them ready for the new body. Now we're getting closer. So now all we've got here, as you can sort of see, are the contacts here for the actual visor as they flip down, and then the wings. So you've got the lights actually on the wings themselves. We've got to disconnect those, and the main power feed, which again is fed from the battery. So these are quite easy again to just pull out, and then we're getting closer to this board now. So be very careful with these ones here. They are very delicate, and as you can see, they're very poorly put together. Not that I don't like Thinkway toys, but I could think that really shielding or insulation or something better than masking tape could have been used. This toy hasn't been opened before. This is how they actually do all of them. It's not very tidy and it's not very nice, but they weren't designing it for us to go back in these and service these at a different date. Right, so that's all disconnected now. All we've got is just a Phillips screw there. So we just use our normal Phillips screwdriver just to disconnect him, and then that motherboard should be ready to pull. I say motherboard, soundboard, whatever you want to call him. There we go. So it's free now to actually pull out of the way. Again, just put that one screw aside so we know where they're going back to. Now, if you're looking at this board here, you can see these are all labelled, which is really nice. So it actually tells you what it is, like the microphone, you've got the wings and everything. So it just helps as a reference point putting it back together. I do notice that I have pulled off the motor connector, which is not the end of the world. That can just slide back over when I put it back on. And none of these are actually pulled out in a way that they can't be removed. So that motor connector, I see I've pulled off. So I'm just going to transfer that back on from the other cartridge. And really, at this point, I'm ready to start transferring over. So this will go back in the old toy. That is not needed for the utility belt one because this will be transferred from the other toy. So we're just going to set them aside over there. This is now going to be our new base for the new unit. So we're going to leave that here. That's going to be ready to start building stuff back into. Now we've got to do exactly the same process on this toy. So we're just going to start disconnecting everything. I'm not going to bore you with how we do it because we've just done that once. And we're going to spin through. I'm going to show you the motherboard and then we're going to start putting it back together. Right, so there we are. So head, faceplate, it's done. We've got two arms that we're not going to be using for this build. Got a set of legs with the all-important connector up here. We're going to need this. And then we've got the same with this here. So super easy. Last couple of bits. I'm just going to pull that board off the frame. Exactly the same as the other one. So it's prepared and ready to go in. So some of you may have noticed that some of these actually pull off. So if I remove this soundboard and just show you what I mean. So if you're looking at this one here, this is just pulled off. This is actually for the belt. Now, as I was saying, they're not fixed with anything particularly special. So if you're looking at this one here, all we now need to do is reline that up to there. And the pins actually just poke back through. It's not secured to the PCB in any way. They're just there as reference markers. So just like that, you line them up and give them a little push and that's him home. So again, so this one's slightly different. This is the other board. So this is what makes a utility belt buzz, a utility belt buzz. Now this is the other board next to it. So just as a comparison to give you an idea of the two, they are different in the way they're connectors, but not wholeheartedly. It's just a revision. So it's just a different circuit board. They've just changed this and then pushed the next toy out. But as you can see, they're very much the same. I'd imagine just different programming and the extra revision for the belt. So now for this video, what I'm going to end up doing is using my extra clean bit. So everything else that's dirty and the old toy, we're going to discard for the moment, and we're going to rebuild him as a signature collection toy. We're going to start with this. This is our frame from our donor. So we're going to start using this. We're going to use the legs, and then we're going to use the arms and head and everything from that body. So first thing we need to redo is now refit the soundboard. That's going to be the first step because we've got to bolt it back in place so we can start resecuring the rest of the terminals to it. So I'm just going to do that very quickly. Just refit it with the screw that's been removed. So very easy. Just bolt him down with that single screw. Once it's home, just make sure it's not loose, and then everything else just needs to go in. So we're just going to start with this one here. And as you can sort of see on the side there, it's got like a locating pin just down the side of that. And they just press in. So you don't need much force. Just push them in with your finger now. So it's home. That's it. Nothing more than that. Now I'm going to quickly do that with the rest of these. So I'm going to need to be closer than my camera dictates because I can't read these as I go, but they are mostly labelled. Now, some of these are going to make sense when you get close to them as to what they actually do. Remember, there are going to be some colour differences and some positioning differences between the two toys. Now, they're essentially the same, and all we want to be doing now is putting these back in. Now, when we do put these back in, we've got to be very careful that these bits here actually locate in the right places, and that when you're looking down these grooves here, that these wires are tucked back far enough. Especially these, they've got a habit of moving around when you put them in, and you end up crimping them up. So make sure that these actually go into the socket nice and tight like that, and then this arm can then be reconnected. As you look at them, they will be labelled, and you can just click it back in. I want to be doing the same with this arm. One's going to be labelled laser, one of them's going to be labelled communicator. So again, just push them down and then get those fitted up nice and tight. That's it. So just get those clicked back in. So these are labelled quite nice and easy to see. This bottom one here is the laser. This one here is the communicator. They are labelled on the board. Now, we've got the feet in, which has got the belt on it. We've got the speaker, which is just here. So everything's falling into place. We just need to make sure as we're going that these wires are actually sitting where they want to be sitting. Now, they do take a funny route, but you do want them out of the way, because otherwise when you pinch the toy together, they have a habit of chopping these cables. The wires aren't particularly good, so you really don't want to do that. So let's start next by putting the head back in. Now, this was the old head that we removed. They are the same, I believe. There are two versions of these, so you will sort of see them as you go, but they are labelled A and B. These are both Bs, which are the later toy. So that's perfect, which means these are a direct swap. Sadly, the A heads are not compatible, just to be moved over, but you can rebuild everything into the other one. It just takes a little bit more messing about. But we are going to use the donor head because it's just in slightly better condition. So let's start by putting him back into the slot. There is a groove that he sits in, so just be careful when you're picking this toy up to support here every time, because it will fall out. But there's a groove here that this toy sits in. So let's just slide him back in, and again just watch these wires as we put them back in, that it doesn't pinch in the wrong place. Now, we are going to have to pull this back out in a minute to get the side clips in that we removed earlier to put the visor in, but I find it's easier to sort of jostle this in, get these connected first, and then come back to putting these in and just lifting them back up and down. Finally, we're now onto the chest plate. Again, we're going to worry about the visor after. So this chest plate just needs fitting. You should be working out at the moment that most of these are fitting very much in the same position that they come off, except the fact these aren't color coded. These are color coded on this board. They're a really good point of reference and almost keep this board hanging around, because some of these you're going to look at and wonder what goes in where, whereas these are color coded to give you a clue as to where they go, which is quite handy if you haven't taken photos. But let's get this reconnected, and then we can move him out the way and then start jostling him back into place. So this is my favorite part, is the last bit of putting everything back together. Now, I was saying earlier, once we're actually in this position and we're ready to put everything back, I want you just to check just the cable in areas again, make sure it's clear, that nothing's going to push through here, which is a favourite because the button on the chest plate pushes through. So you just need to make sure the resting position is where it's going to need to be. Just make sure the head's still clicked in. Now, you're going to have a left and a right on these, and these are the bits that hold the visor in. Now, if we're looking at what they do, so the right one's this one, obviously left one being this one. The left one's got the extra nugget on the end there. So they're going to slide back into this bit here and hold the visor in. So what I'm going to do is literally grab the visor, and you can see which way up it goes. We're going to rest him in roughly where we want him to be, and then you're just going to work these into position. Now this little bit here goes up through the visor, and then it sort of pushes down in place to lock it in. And we're going to do the same with the other side. So once you're in place, you should get quite a smooth operation, and it clicks on those click switches there. So now for the last bit, just going to poke him down. The speaker assembly slides down behind the belt, so just make sure everything's in place, and you should be able to roughly feel that there's nothing obstructing it. If there is, always go back and check, because you've had everything apart and you just don't want a little cable getting in the way and breaking anything. So just spend that time just to double check everything. And once it is, you should be able to line this up and slide him back down into place. Once he's there, just make sure these bits just at the top there follow the same route and go down, because these will pinch in and hold everything together once we know he's in the right place, which he is. So now all we've got to do, we've got those 4 screws on the back, so hold him together quite tight, flip him over, and let's get those screws in. So just back where you started right at the beginning. So that's all done and back together. So we've got the last bit here, just reassembling that clamshell. So just put him back on, snap him into place. And now, if we turn him to the on position, we can give him a functional test and just make sure everything's as it should be.
I'm receiving a communication from Star Command.
So we can see the communicator's working. We've got to test the laser, which is good. We've got head movement.
I am Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger. Buzz Lightyear, signing off. I am Buzz Lightyear.
Good. And then we've got the wings, which again should fire both out. We've got both the lights on each side, so that means that's done. But that is a successful job. Oh, the lid is the last thing. So you should get animation every time that opens and it closes. And just because I get so much hate at the back of these videos for using a toy to repair a toy, we're going to fix this dude too. So no buzzers were harmed in the making of this video.